Hello and welcome to the Farming Week, the podcast brought to you by Agriland.ie, keeping you up to date with all the latest in Irish agriculture. I'm Charles O'Donnell and I'm joined by Francess McDonnell, Cathal and Joe Griffin. Well, obviously the big news of the week is the confirmation that Ireland will retain the Nitrates Derogation for a further 3 years at least, following a key vote in the EU. Let's get straight into the details. Frances, can you tell us what happened this week?
Yes, Charles, the European Commission's Nitrates Committee gave the go-ahead for Ireland to retain the derogation, but only under certain conditions. And this includes enhanced compliance with the Habitats Directive. There'll also be several new requirements for 2028 for derogation farmers in the Slaney, Barrow and Munster Blackwater River catchments. And that is because, according to the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine, these 4 catchments have the greatest gap to target in terms of nitrogen load reduction. There's no doubt that the decision is a major relief for farmers across the country, but I'd say it's probably no one happier to see this decision over the line than the Minister for Agriculture, Food and the Marine, Martin Hayden. We interviewed the Minister at the start of the year, just after he'd taken up the job in January, and one of the first things he told us was that the nitrates derogation would be one of his top priorities in 2025. So credit where it's due because he has delivered on that front. But let's just hear what his reaction was this week on the nitrates decision.
First of all, this is a fantastic day for Irish agriculture. It's a huge sigh of relief for our derogation farmers and for other farmers who live beside derogation farmers and were worried about land availability into the future and beyond. We now have certainty, and the unanimous decision of that committee in Brussels today is something we're really happy with, because that wasn't guaranteed that it would be unanimous, but it is a really clear sign that the negotiation process we've gone through, which was lengthy and detailed, has come now to a solution that member states, we were able to manage to convince them that this is the right outcome for us because our farming system is different. It does require us to address the Habitats Directive in more detail. That's something the Commission flagged with us back in June. We had to agree to addressing the Habitats Directive in more detail to get into the detailed negotiations of the autumn. So that's a commitment after consulting with the farm organisations and industry that I signed up to in August. And we spent the autumn negotiating with the Commission as to what that conditionality and what that would look like and what that process would look like. It involves my department having to take on a lot of ecologists and do a lot of work in that space. I want to take that in-house and manage that so that we can do that and keep control of it. We didn't obviously hire staff prior to this decision because we weren't sure we had a derogation into next year. Now that we do, we will set about a recruitment process there and putting a structure in place that allows us to do assessments on a catchment and a sub-catchment basis.
And that was Minister Martin Hayden talking to us at Leinster House earlier this week. And despite the fact that the derogation has been renewed, the Minister has stressed that DAFM is beginning the next stage of the process, and that is the work of addressing the key conditionality within the derogation decision. And it's the detail around conditionality which, frankly, Charles, worries farming organisations. Despite the cautiously broad welcome for the result, the ICMSA President Dennis Drennan said the big challenge will lie ahead because of what has to be delivered by farmers. He said this will mean farmers, the industry, government and others in the EU working together. The IFA has also said that while the decision is a relief to farmers, a longer-term solution is needed. And the ICSA has said that it's particularly concerned about the obligations linked to the Habitats Directive. This is a concern shared by ICOS, but really, as Churlon pointed out, at the end of the day, the renewal of the nitrates derogation is a crucial step in safeguarding the country's farming model, and it has delivered clarity for farmers. But of course, not everyone has been happy with the derogation result. And Tashka described it as a shocking decision and said it was a bad day for Irish water bodies. And the Sustainable Water Network Group, a network of 25 Irish environmental organisations, has said that the evidence simply did not exist to justify renewing Ireland's nitrates derogation.
And Frances, despite the decision this week, Ireland's nitrates derogation remains in the spotlight for another reason at the moment as well.
Yes, Charles, because there is a case that is before the Court of Justice of the European Union which centres around Ireland's 5th Nitrates Action Programme, the NAP. The 5th NAP is in front of the Court of Justice because of a legal challenge first launched by Antashka back in 2022 to judicially review the 5th NAP. This will bring Irish farmers and Ireland's water quality status under the scrutiny of that court. And the reason why the legal challenge is before the Court of Justice of the EU is because the High Court judge that presided over Antashka's challenge in Dublin believed that the case raised significant issues of European law. The Court of Justice is now reviewing a number of questions in relation to the issue of European law, and these are critically linked to the nitrates derogation. And we don't really expect any decision on that to come forward before at least next March, so that will firmly keep the spotlight on derogation.
We're going to bring in Agriland's dairy specialist Cathal O'Shea now to continue our coverage of nitrates. As well as the derogation being confirmed this week, Ireland's 6th Nitrates Action Programme, or NAP, was also finalised and published this week. The new measures and conditionality to be included have featured in Agriland's coverage of nitrates over the last several months, and you can check out all that coverage out on our website and app. But Cathal, you're going to take a look at slurry storage and what this week's developments mean in that regard.
Hi Charles, yes that's right. Under the Nitrates Action Programme, all farmers will be required to increase their slurry storage from the current requirement of 0.33 cubic metres a week to 0.4 cubic metres per week. That means for the average farmer who's milking a 100 cow herd and in the zone for a 16-week close period, they're going to need an additional 112 metres cubed of slurry storage, bringing them up to 640 metres cubed of slurry storage in total. As well as that, soil water has gone from 0.21 metres cubed per week to 0.3 cubic metres per week, which means again the average farm milking 100 dairy cows will need an additional 36 metres cubed for the restricted period, which of course runs from December 1st to December 31st. There is a couple of, however, provisions for these regulations. For soil water, the regulations will be based on how many cows are being milked at what the department refers to critical times. This is rather than the peak number of cows being milked. Now, this could prove problematic for winter milking herds, who for the first time this year are part of the full month restriction period. These rules will not come into effect until the 1st of October 2028. The department has said this is to give farmers time to prepare. Now, the only thing is, it's been common knowledge for some time that the department felt these existing requirements were quite underestimated, especially after Teagasc stated that the average dairy cow in Ireland is producing 21% more slurry than the existing values. So look, while milk price was good, a lot of farmers have thrown up new slurry towers or put new tanks in place, but a lot of farmers will be cut out for space. Now the only thing is, as it stands, there is currently plenty of options under TAMS for installing new tanks or stores, but then again, milk checks are getting smaller.
No doubt about that, Cathal, and we saw that continue this week with the initial milk price announcements for November supplies.
Yes, unfortunately right there, Charles. So we've been seeing a rapid decline in milk prices since the summer following quite a large oversupply of milk globally. A lot of people were optimistic that this would turn quickly, as America usually has a habit of culling hard and fast once prices dip. However, with the price of grain over there, they're still pumping out litres, which is quite concerning for our prices. On top of that, our own domestic milk intake has grown by over 430 million litres in the first 10 months of this year. That's brought us to a total of 8.08 billion litres. And look, this drop in milk price has been seen again this week, with the first co-ops releasing their November milk prices. Dairy Gold have gone with a 2 cent per litre cut. That's the smallest cut the processor has delivered since July, but it's still bringing their base price down below the cost of production, which is reported to be anywhere between 37 and 41 cents a litre. Lakeland Dairies have also announced a big slash of 4 cents a litre this week. This is the second month in a row where the co-op has delivered a 4 cent litre cut to its suppliers. We're not at 2023 levels yet, Charles, but the way these cuts are coming, it does pose a very worrying sight. Market analysts are predicting that the prices will drop below 36 cents a litre, and it's not looking like there's going to be an upturn until Q3 of 2026. So I suppose farmers need to start battening down the hatches because it's going to be a tough spring ahead, Charles.
Thanks for that, Cathal. Well, Dairy Gold was mentioned there, and the milk price wasn't the only news from that processor this week. Dairy Gold has also launched a farm succession programme for new, expanding and retiring milk suppliers. Dairy Gold said the initiative aims to offer options and guidance for its members in planning farm succession. We'll move on now. And if it wasn't for the nitrates derogation, we would have probably started this week's podcast by talking about farm scheme payments, of which there were several this week, as is typically the case in December. So, Frances, can you take us through the roundup of those schemes this week?
Yes, Charles, we've calculated here in Agriland that DAFM has paid more than €500 million to farmers since the beginning of the month. And this week alone, we've seen payments finally start to go out under the scheme to support long-established young farmers. Now, as any regular listener to this podcast will know, this is a scheme that we have been talking about for a long time because it's really been a long time in coming around. But finally, according to the department, there have now been payments of the maximum amount of €5,000 issued to 445 people. There have also been balancing payments under the 2025 Eco Scheme paid this week, Charles. The Eco Scheme balancing payments will bring the total paid under this scheme since October to almost 288 million. And there's over 112,000 farmers now in receipt of that payment. There's also been 55.15 million in payments for the organic farming scheme going into bank accounts, with an estimated 4,858 farmers set to receive those payments. And payments have also started to issue for year 3 of the Suckler Carbon Efficiency Programme, that's SCEP. They've begun, and in total over 47.6 million have started issuing to more than 14,000 participating farmers. And that currently represents over 94% of SCEP participants.
Just while we're on farm schemes, forest owners received some good news this week with the confirmation of a new reconstitution scheme for private forest owners affected by Storm Dara and Storm Éowyn earlier in the year. €55 million will be allocated to the scheme, and applications for it will open in early 2026. So be sure to check out our article on Agriland on our website and app for all the details on that scheme. Well, with the derogation issue largely put to bed now for 2025 at least, the next big developing story over the next few weeks will be the EU Mercosur trade agreement. The so-called safeguards for sensitive products such as beef are currently being negotiated in the European Parliament. We saw developments on that front, Frances, this week that might have gone slightly under the radar with the nitrates developments, so maybe you can bring us up to speed now.
Yeah, there's been a number of key developments here, Charles, because we've seen MEPs on the International Trade Committee introduce compromise amendments to the Mercosur safeguard regulation. And this adopted package, agreed with numerous parties, includes a significant tightening of market monitoring obligations. Now, under the Trade Committee's new amendments, the Commission must issue monitoring reports every 3 months rather than 6. And that's with the intention of providing an early warning system for sensitive agricultural products. These reports must also include product-specific data, enhance border check findings, and where relevant, member state level impacts. Now, separately, the European Commission has confirmed that from January, it will reinforce significantly the level of controls, both in the EU and outside, on food, plants and animals. The EU Commissioner for Health and Animal Welfare said this week that the Commission plans to improve even further the controls and the enforcement on agri-food imports. So over the next 2 years, the EU plans to double the number of audits carried out in third countries. It also plans to increase audits of European border control posts and step up the detection of illegal pesticides, food and feed safety, and also have a renewed focus on animal welfare standards. The EU Commissioner for Health and Animal Welfare also said that the Commission wants to make sure that farmers in Europe are not faced with international competition that is unfair. And the Commission stressed that imports should face the exact same rules and requirements that farmers in Europe have to face when they are producing food, plants or animals on the EU market. So the moves have been really a sort of deliberate approach to try and reassure farmers about some of their key Mercosur concerns. And we've seen this raised not just in Ireland, but right across Europe over the last couple of weeks. So the move to strengthen controls is a way, I think, to alleviate some of the concerns that have been repeatedly raised.
Well, there has been a lot happening in Irish agriculture this week, but let's not forget that the island of Ireland is still contending with a Bluetongue virus situation at the moment. And indeed, we have some updates to bring you that came to us just as we sat down to record this podcast. So, Frances, what's the latest?
Yeah, unfortunately, Charles, the Department of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs, that's DERA in the north, has confirmed the emergence of 2 more suspected Bluetongue cases on a third County Down farm. The Temporary Control Zone, that's a TC-SAID surveillance, has detected the suspect cases in 2 cows on a farm near Bangor. Now, following initial veterinary assessment based on the proximity of cases, it has been decided that the emergence of the latest suspect case does not require an extension to that temporary control zone. But obviously, Andrew Moore, who is the Minister for Agriculture in the North, has said that while the emergence of another suspect case is disappointing, it's unfortunately not surprising given the scale of the surveillance testing that is going on around the outbreak near Bangor. And it comes really just after last weekend when DERA also confirmed that a suspected Bluetongue case had been identified on a farm in County Down. Now, vets in Northern Ireland investigated the suspect case of the virus in a cow near Grey Abbey, and it continues to be a major worry for farmers north and south. We've also heard Minister Martin Hayden confirm that there's increased surveillance in the south because of the risk of Bluetongue. These latest cases come just as one of the biggest events in Northern Ireland is underway, and that's the Royal Ulster Winter Fair. The Royal Ulster Agricultural Society, that's RUAS, made the decision to cancel cattle classes at the show this year because of the ongoing risk and uncertainty regarding Bluetongue in Northern Ireland. However, the 39th show has gone ahead despite the fact that the RUAS said it was extremely regrettable that there will be no cattle at this year's event, but I would imagine that Bluetongue is a major source of conversation there today.
Finally, a report this week from the Irish Whisky Association found that last year, 2024, was a good year for Irish whisky sales. However, the trade tensions brought about by the policies of the current US administration might be a point of concern going forward. For more on this, we're going to bring in Joe Griffin. So Joe, what does this report tell us?
Yeah, hi Charles. So this is a good news story. The Irish Whisky Association, as you mentioned, has published its 2024 trade report, which shows that 16.15 million cases of Irish whisky were sold in 2024. That's a record for the category. Their Irish Whisky Global Trade Report shows that the top 5 international markets in 2024 were the US, Poland, Germany, India and the UK. We also like our whisky. The domestic market recorded 707,000 case sales last year, making Ireland the 4th largest market overall for the product. Looking to America, the US remains the biggest overall market with over 5.47 million cases recorded in this market in 2024. This represents, brace yourself, 1 of every 3 bottles sold in the world. The US is also the most valuable market for spirits in the world, although EU spirits exports, including Irish whisky, now attract a 15% import tariff, as you mentioned. The Irish Whisky Association said that the full impact of these tariffs on the category in its biggest export market is not yet known. So, the association has repeated its call for return to the 0 for 0 trading arrangement with the US that we enjoyed for so many years. The amount of cases sold in the top 5 export markets for Irish whisky is as follows. So 1 case has 9 litres. So in the US, it's 5.5 million, just under 5.5 million, 5,473,000. Poland, 718,000 cases. Germany, 715,000. India, 700,000. And UK, 698,000. Looking at other markets, the association said that Irish whisky is growing elsewhere. Major growth can be seen in emerging markets such as Japan and India, which are up 124% and 120% respectively over the past 3 years, according to the new report. The category has also enjoyed increased success throughout the EU. Of the top 20 markets for Irish whisky sales, 10 are EU member states. Looking ahead to next year, the Irish Whisky Association noted the importance of the EU-US trading relationship and market diversification. Owen O'Cahan, director of the Irish Whisky Association, broke out a good weather metaphor here. He said, "Our sector, like many others, has weathered a turbulent trading period this year, but we hope that calmer waters are on the horizon." The numbers from 2024 are promising for our sector, with the biggest sales volume ever, and our market position in new and emerging markets is getting stronger, he added. There's still big potential for the product. O'Cahan said, despite challenges, there's still significant opportunity for the Irish whisky category to grow, given it only accounts for 12% of the global whisky market. Key to ensuring the category's continued success and growth trajectory, he said, is an urgent focus on trade relations with the US and the opening up of new markets through the removal of tariff and non-tariff barriers. And then he concluded by saying the association's priorities for 2026 will include advocating for the finalisation and swift implementation of relevant trade agreements, including an EU-India free trade agreement, considering that India is the world's biggest whisky market and represents a significant growth opportunity for Irish whisky.
Thanks for that, Joe. So that almost brings us to the end of today's podcast. Just before we go, we'll just remind you that the latest episode of the It Started With Slurry podcast is now available to listen to on Agriland's app and website. Agriland's Breffney O'Brien speaks with viral sensation Owen Lynch on a wide range of issues, so be sure to check that out. But that's where we'll leave it. Please don't forget to rate, review and follow The Farming Week on Spotify, Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. We'd love if you could spare some time to give us 5 stars and share The Farming Week with anyone you think might be interested. From Francis, Cathal, Joe and myself, thanks for listening.